This movie is the Spider-Man Homecoming of Batman movies, and I love it. Hi, Ghaha Bran. Welcome to this non-spoiler review of The Batman. If you're looking for a spoiler review, go ahead and just be a little patient, or you can just click into that part on the video right there in the scrubber. So, The Batman is the latest Batman solo film that we've gotten in 10 years, which is pretty insane. So in this movie, Batman is in his second year of being Batman, so he's kind of like in his puberty stage. He looks the part, he acts the part, but does he really understand what it means to be Batman? As for the conflict in the movie, Riddler is going around murdering people and Batman has to figure out why. So at the beginning of this movie, I said that this movie is the Spider-Man Homecoming of Batman movies. Does that mean it's crammed with humor and teenage drama? No, but just like how Spider-Man Homecoming perfectly blended the superhero genre with another genre that perfectly suits the titular character, this movie does the same. Spider-Man Homecoming was a high school drama and a coming-of-age story on top of being a superhero story. Meanwhile, The Batman is a detective thriller on top of being a superhero story. Not to mention that both of these movies forego the iconic origin stories that both of these characters are known for, and instead reflect those lessons they would have learned in their origin stories in their character arcs in their respective movies. And Batman here is intense. I would say my favorite thing about him in this movie is his presence. I'm not going to spoil his introduction into the movie, but to me, it's probably one of my favorite protagonist introductions ever since Captain America's introduction in Infinity War. As for Catwoman, I thought she was okay. I feel like with Catwoman, she's always supposed to be elusive. You're not supposed to know too much about her. But this Catwoman was a lot more humanized. We got to learn a lot more about her troubles and issues. As for the Bat-Cat relationship, I wasn't really feeling it. I'm not gonna spoil any interactions that they had, but Batman felt kind of annoyed with Selina most of the movie, to me at least. And then at a certain point in the movie, he just starts caring for her. Maybe if I rewatch the movie, I'll be a little bit more convinced because I'll be focusing more on their relationship, because I was more focused on the crimes, villains, and mystery. And I want to say that this movie does multiple supervillains right, because there's a lot of different ways you can do multiple supervillains in a superhero movie. You can call attention to a select few of them and leave the rest of them as background characters, like in No Way Home with Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, and Electro. You can disproportionately call attention to all of them, like in Spider-Man 3. Or you can call attention to one and just have the others be thugs, like in Shang-Chi, almost teetering on Easter eggs. But the Batman really does the work to incorporate its villains into the story. My favorite villain in the movie, Penguin, holds his own little corner of Gotham. It really makes the city feel alive, because oftentimes characters and environments are only active when the camera is on them. But I could tell that Penguin and Falcone, they had their own agendas in the movie behind the scenes while the movie was going on and the camera wasn't even on them, and I think that's amazing. And another bit of praise I have about the movie is that it was an easy to follow story despite its numerous characters, and I can't say the same about the Batman Nolan films. But maybe it's not a question of comprehension, but more of a question of intrigue, because throughout the 3-hour runtime, I was never bored with the Batman. With the Dark Knight trilogy, sometimes I would get a little bit bored with each of those films. So in that regard, I just like the Batman better. And another super small note, this movie is surprisingly funny. Okay, super small spoiler for a joke in this movie. So Penguin is handcuffed both with his hands and his legs, and he walks like a penguin while he's like that. And that's just hilarious. So, would I rewatch The Batman? Yes, I would rewatch this movie in theaters. This is my new favorite Batman movie. I think I like Batman more because of this movie. I really hope they make a sequel to this movie, but at the same time, I feel like a trilogy would never feel complete, at least to me, because don't get me wrong, it would probably be my favorite trilogy for Batman, but I just like the nice clean bookending of the Nolan trilogy because it's just beginning and end. But imagine a trilogy where each movie has a different color scheme, because this movie was beautiful and it followed the color scheme of its marketing just perfectly with the red and black aesthetic, obviously. But imagine in the second movie, let's say Mr. Freeze, who I would want as the main villain, imagine he comes to town, right? And then he makes all the fog or whatever, his presence just makes it colder in Gotham, and that just makes everything kind of have a gloomy blue and gray and black feel. I think that would be cool. Also, do yourself a favor and watch this movie in 4DX. Go to a Regal theater and just watch it. There's a certain scene in this movie. It's the wildest 4DX I have ever seen in a movie ever. I've never experienced anything like it. I thought Let There Be Carnage had really good 4D. This movie was insane. It was like 110%. A 4DX for 5 straight minutes, and it was amazing. Well, anyways, that was it for the non-spoiler section of this video. We are now entering the spoiler section of this review. So get out of here. If you haven't watched the movie, go watch it. And if you have watched the movie, thanks for sticking around. Starting off with small spoilers first. So when Catwoman was fighting Falcone, did anyone think that she kind of looked like Halle Berry's Catwoman, like her outfit? I think I have to rewatch to confirm, but to me it kind of looked like it. And speaking of fight scenes, this movie does a really good job of showing Batman as a force of nature, especially with the lighting and just how beautiful this movie is. It's just stunning. And side note, did anyone find it interesting how Batman's Batarang was like his chest plate logo? I thought it was cool, but that means this Batman only carries around one Batarang when, like, you look at the cartoons and the movies and he's just chucking those things around like nothing. So I have been praising this movie for the whole video, but there were a couple things that I didn't like. So throughout the whole movie, you're trying to figure out who the rat with wings is, and it turns out to be Falcone, and I just wasn't satisfied with that answer because a falcon, to me, is nothing like a rat with wings, like a pigeon or whatever, or like even a bat. I just wasn't satisfied by the answer to that riddle. I also wasn't a big fan of Batman's narration at the beginning and end of the movie. I understand it's a very comic booky thing, especially for Batman to just monologue to himself, but to me it just felt like a parody of Batman. Like, it made me think of Nicolas Cage's character from Into the Spider-Verse, where he's just talking to himself.
Wherever I go, the wind follows, and the wind, it smells like rain.
So let's talk about the Riddler, because to me, the Riddler just wasn't threatening enough, at least whenever his face was on screen. Whenever he had the mask on, or just mask on without talking, or just doing stuff off screen, like, you know, sending his bomb threats, or just sending out his riddles, I found him imposing. But whenever his mask came off and he started talking, I just couldn't put up with it. It kind of just broke the illusion for me. Whenever he was talking in person, I just couldn't get into it. I also wasn't a huge fan of Riddler using social media. Like, I understand this is a modern adaptation of Batman and this is the world that we live in today, but I feel like Gotham, in my mind, is perpetually just in a gothic state. Like, modern, but just like in a weird bubble of itself in time. Like, seeing Riddler with Instagram Live hearts going up his screen while he's streaming just didn't sit right with me, especially with him being a serial killer. But at the same time, I'm trying to think, if there were a Black Mirror episode where we worshipped a serial killer through social media, would I be okay with it? Like, would I like that idea? I think I would. But I think it's more dependent on what social media that person was using. Like, if it's just tweets and threads talking about the person, I think I would be fine with that. Actually, I would really like that. But don't have him use like Snapchat filters and have him asking for donations and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. I don't know. It's overall just not a huge fan of it. And that brings me to the finale, because I really wanted the Riddler to just have one final challenge for Batman, because at the end of the movie, he goes to the community center, he fights off the goons, and then he saves the people of Gotham, which is really good. It's nice, right? But this is the Riddler, and I really wanted him to just have a final puzzle that Batman had to just think his way through and outsmart the Riddler. Side note, I really like that Batman was able to solve Riddler's riddles so quickly, just like on the spot he thought of the answer, except for the Larada one. That one took him a while. One of the final things I want to say about the movie is that I really like Batman's transition from a symbol of vengeance to a symbol of justice, and having Riddler embody vengeance to me is just so smart, because vengeance in itself is a mystery. Because you take that scenario in the beginning of the movie with the Asian man getting beaten up by the muggers, right? Batman beating up the muggers to save the guy. You know, from the Asian guy's perspective, he doesn't really know why Batman's beating up the muggers, because, you know, he doesn't really know Batman's deal. You know, Batman just seems like an angry guy who just beats people up in the night, and he's just like a force of intimidation. That's why he's scared of Batman in the beginning. But if Batman is able to establish his presence as a symbol of justice, like he does at the end of the movie, you know, with the woman holding onto his arm and not wanting him to let go, pretty much, you know, the Asian man would have felt more relieved, and I think that's so cool. Overall, I think I like Ben Affleck's Batman a little bit better than Robert Pattinson's still, because whenever Ben Affleck was written consistently, he gave off that competence that I really associate with Batman. And Robert Pattinson's Batman was very gloomy and very down and just angry all the time, and that made me feel like he was a little bit more immature, which makes sense. He's still learning. But, you know, seeing Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne run into the city to save that child, or just, you know, try to help people as much as he can, running into a crisis with no gadgets or anything, to me, that's a pretty good depiction of Batman. Meanwhile, like I said, Pattinson's Batman is still learning, but he's still just got a lot of hatred in him. Well, that concludes my review of The Batman. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe for more videos and more movie reviews. But until then, I'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye.